games. So what we did there was we took all of those hit effects that we had and we just made really much louder versions of each of them to kind of highlight that when those events are happening. So with all that hitting happening, you know, you're going to be killing a lot of monsters as well. So we really wanted to pump up the player's sense of impact on monsters. So in Diablo 3, the majority of monsters die using ragdoll physics. And we really like this because it allows the player to really interact with the monsters when you kill them. Depending on what kind of damage or the force that you're hitting them with, they're going to die in a different way. And then you can kind of set up little circumstances where you can like knock them off of ledges or make them go flying. But also, because there's all these different damage types in the game, we also wanted monsters that die from different types of damage to have a sort of elemental flavored death. So if you hit them with fire, they don't just play their ragdoll death, they play like a fiery ragdoll death or a poisony ragdoll death or lightning. And since we're making a big deal about critical hits, we also wanted to make a really big deal about critical deaths. So when you hit a monster with critical damage and you kill them, they literally explode. Now, you may have noticed that a lot of things in this game are exploding. And there's a really good reason for that, and it kind of comes from a really complicated formula that we developed on our own to sort of guide us through the process of like when should something explode, when shouldn't explode, and how does that work. And so I'm going to get that here we go. So this equation is monster plus explosion equals awesome. And you may not be able to tell. Awesome was being represented by Ted Nugent there. all those elemental deaths and critical deaths are really cool, a lot of fun. But one of the things about Diablo 2 that really made it cool was that all of the characters had their own sort of special, like, custom death that they would play, and that brought a lot of personality to the monsters in Diablo 2. So we wanted to have some of that as well. So what we did is we sort of reserved some monsters for what we call special deaths, and they're custom deaths that are built just like the ones in Diablo 2. And what we do for those is we look into the character's core vibe. What is this monster all about? And we pick something from that, and we try to punch that up. So special deaths are a really good example of our second overriding goal, which was reinforcing monster personality and bringing that to the forefront. But the other way that we emphasize the monster's character and personality is we have to look at the monster across the whole. How do they get on screen? What do they do? And of course, eventually, how do they die? So one of the things that we do is we look at that monster and we say, well, he's got to get on screen in a really cool way. So one of the things that we did with these we went to the 1,000-pounder here on screen. We said his vibe is he's all about hell, and he gets summoned in literally piece by piece. So when he gets on screen, we figured, well, he's from hell, he should be pretty mad, and he's really big. So we want to express a lot of anger, and part of his gameplay is that he gets really mad when when you almost kill him, and he throws this big temper tantrum, and then he changes the way he plays. And so we wanted to change also the way that which of course means that you've got to change the way you play him. So we wanted to make that really loud. So what we did is we changed the way he looked, we gave him glowing tattoos, we changed his attack animations, we changed all the special effects, and then of course, when you finally do get the chance to kill him, he does sort of a reverse of how he got summoned in, because we wanted to echo, well, how did he get in on screen? Let's sort of do a reverse of that, and that'll really show off like this whole idea that he was summoned from hell. And that's just a taste of some of the special effects that we have in Diablo 3. And next up is Jay, who will be talking about monster creation.
All right, well, I kind of wish I had more video on my slides. Press the FX artist to bring all the cool stuff.
Your clicker there, Jay.
Oh, my clicker? So Julian's told you all kinds of cool things about how we kill the crap out of monsters. What I'm going to talk about is how we go through the process of creating them in the first place. There's actually a lot of different places monsters come from. This list of kind of bullet points is actually not a chronological list. It's more just like this is where what happens. Some monsters come from visual concepts. The artists have a cool idea for something they want to see. Hey, we want a big giant dude who's super fat, he blows up and spits crazy eels out of him. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Go. Designers are like, oh, we want a guy who has this really charged up, powerful attack, so that but when it hits the ground, it gets stuck, and so you get a chance to retaliate against him. And so the artists go, okay, we can come up with a cool visual for that guy. Sometimes it's this area needs goatmen in it because that's the kind of area that it is according to the lore and the history, and so that's a case where a monster or request comes from lore. So all these departments kind of feed off one another, and we all kind of pass around ideas until we come up with an initial list of kind of the creatures that we're going to create. So after we do that, we have what we call it a what do they do, how do they die meeting. It's just kind of, it sounds snappy, so that's what we call them. But essentially we get the designers and the artists together who are going to be working on a creature, and we talk about that creature and what we want out of them. And we ask 3 key questions. The first one is, how does the creature appear? The second one is, what do they do? And the last one is, how do they die? Now, when we started, we used to kind of say, oh, well, we used to spend a lot of time on what they do, but as we've spent more time developing, we've learned that how they appear and how they die are, if not just as important, sometimes even more important. A lot of creatures show up and die, and that's all they do. And they do it a lot. They show up, and then a couple seconds later they get crushed. So that has to be really cool. It has to be really visceral, and that's one of the reasons why we came up with this really elaborate kill system, is so that every time you kill a monster, it's really cool, and a lot of times it's really different and changes and is really dynamic. And then how they appear has to be really important. The ghouls can't just walk on screen from the side. They've got to climb up walls, and the 1,000-pounder has to be summoned and come together. The triune vessel, which is that big, that big demonic, guy, the cultist who transforms into the demon. Those guys are, the way they appear is really cool, and actually incited some gameplay. So those things are really important. And that's what these meetings are all about. What we usually come out of these is with a perfect picture of what we want the creature to be, going from art to design and back and forth. And so it's a great way for us to kind of come on the same page with a monster. I'm going to pass it over to Brian.
So, as Jay was saying, that's kind of where we start. How is this dude born? More importantly, how does he die? And in the in-between stage, that's kind of our job from a visual standpoint, is to try and make him read as best as possible for the 5 seconds that this character lives. And so really that's kind of where we start. We take all the design goals that they want. It's a very similar process to our hero creation process. We talk with story and what Leonard and his guys want to accomplish out of the history of where these creatures come from. And we take all that information and add the design of, is it a melee creature, is it a casting creature, what kind of activity is this thing going to do on screen. And then we think to ourselves, okay, well, if our hero classes are this morally gray, I'm not sure if I really like them, they kind of look like bad dudes already type of guys, then just imagine what our enemies are going to look like. They need to look even worse, right? And this is kind of, for us, one of the most enjoyable aspects, because it's just crazy fun to come up with really weird creatures. I mean, we just basically reach into the depths of our deepest, darkest depths of our imagination and just spew out whatever we can think of. And it's usually probably what design and story was looking for, just the most mutated, nasty-looking, demonic thing, tasteful, of course, that you can possibly think of.